Erin, thank you so much for joining me today from Leave No Trace and to talk about the Leave No Trace Gold Standard program that exists for destinations and now being expanded to outfitters and guides as well. So thanks for joining me first. Thanks for doing everything that Leave No Trace does to educate outdoor enthusiasts and how we can better take care of the places that we recreate in. I've learned a lot over the years from Leave No Trace, that things that I just took for granted or had no idea uh, about. So I really appreciate everything the organization does, and I'm really excited to learn about the outfitter program and sharing this with our huge network of outfitters, guides, and rental shops. Thanks again.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm excited to share a little bit about Leave No Trace, our organization, what we do, and then how you all as outfitters and guides can get involved in that. So just to introduce myself, my name is Erin Collier. I am the Education and Program Manager at Leave No Trace. And I've been working with Leave No Trace for around 6 years. I've had a couple different jobs, but in my role as Education and Program Manager, I manage a few of our on-the-ground programs, one of those being our gold standard designation. And maybe you have heard of the term Leave No Trace, but aren't super familiar with the organization. That's pretty common. We have been around for about 30 years as an organization, and our main mission is just to provide access to education. We want everyone to be able to learn about the ways that we can impact our natural world, and even more importantly, the ways we can minimize those impacts. So we're a national nonprofit, an international movement, and we really believe that people are the solution to many of our conservation challenges. When we have that access to education, we become empowered to become stewards of our planet, of our outdoor areas. And what I mean by stewards is really just taking any action we can to protect those places, to minimize our impacts. And in order to do that, we really need that education first. So that's what we provide, is all of these educational resources, courses, materials, so that everyone can learn how to minimize their impacts and everyone can be empowered to become stewards of our planet. And our research has shown that when people are educated and leave no trace, they're about 5 times more likely to take on these active roles in becoming stewards. They're 5 times more likely to take actions to protect nature. And that's a huge amount of increase in taking these actions. But the critical piece is that training is getting people access to that leave no trace training. So we do that through kind of 3 main ways. The first is expanding our training for all people. So I'll talk a little bit more about this kind of later on in the presentation, but we have a huge amount of ways for people to get involved in Leave No Trace and get access to that training. And we try to continually improve that and make it even more accessible so that everybody has that access. The second main thing that we do is increase stewardship. So we give people opportunities to get involved. So once you've learned Leave No Trace, that next step is, taking action. And we want to connect people with ways to take action to protect our planet, to protect our outdoor areas. And then the third main thing that we do is advancing science and research. So everything that Leave No Trace teaches is based in science and research. When we tell you that a cat hole should be 6 to 8 inches deep, that's not an arbitrary number. That's because some grad student had the job of burying human waste at different levels and digging it up periodically to find out what layer of soil actually breaks down our human waste the fastest. So that's just one example of the science and research that we're constantly doing to make sure we really understand what are the potential impacts that we're causing, what are truly the best ways to minimize them, and also what are the best ways to communicate and teach about that so that we are really empowering people to take these practices on and incorporate them into their lives. So these are kind of the 3 main avenues of work that Leave No Trace does. And they are all really critical in getting our message out to folks and empowering people to practice Leave No Trace. The thing that you might be more familiar with is our 7 principles. So when we talk about Leave No Trace education and getting this out in front of people, the kind of core piece of our education is the 7 principles of Leave No Trace. These are really the 7 main ways that we can be minimizing our impacts when we're in an outdoor area. And they are designed to be kind of broad so that they can apply to all ecosystems, all different ways of getting outdoors. I'll talk a little bit more about this later on, but we do have some more specific resources around the 7 principles for maybe climbing or desert ecosystems or sea kayaking, because there are going to be some variations depending on the type of activity or the ecosystem that we're in. But generally, these 7 principles are a great framework to help us understand how to minimize our impacts. And they are not the 7 rules of Leave No Trace. They are the 7 principles, because they aren't meant to be rules to tell us how to connect with nature. They're meant to just be this framework to help us think about how to minimize our impacts. So we teach full 5-day courses on the 7 principles, but I'm going to give you just a very brief rundown of what they are here. So the first principle is to plan ahead and prepare. This is making sure we know how to have a safe trip and a Leave No Trace trip before we even leave our house, before we go on that trip. The second principle is to travel and camp on durable surfaces. No matter how we are traveling through a space, maybe it's a hike, maybe we're using a motorized wheelchair, maybe we are mountain biking, we want to know how to travel in a way that's going to be the least impactful. And most of the time that means sticking to trails and sticking to established campsites. But if we're going outside of that, knowing how to do so in the least impactful way for that ecosystem. The third principle is to dispose of waste properly. This includes packing out our trash, even things like apple cores and pistachio seed shells. This also includes having a bathroom plan. It includes thinking about wastewater, maybe from washing dishes or washing ourselves. Any kind of waste that we might create in that outdoor area has the potential for pollution and contamination. So we want to know how to dispose of that in a way that is going to avoid that pollution and contamination. The fourth principle is leave what you find. So we want to leave the things we find in nature because they have a role to play, maybe in the story of that place, maybe in the ecosystem. And they also play a role for the people who come visit that area after us. So we can, forage, we can still interact with an area, but we want to do so in a way that's in line with rules and regulations, that is not depleting that resource. And we want to leave things how we found them as often as we can. The fifth principle is to minimize campfire impacts. Campfires can be hugely impactful in the form of wildfire, but they also sterilize the soil underneath them. They can cause issues with depleting the kind of woody debris that we collect to burn, and that can change the composition of the soil. So we want to really know, can I have a campfire? Do I know how to have a safe fire? How do I put it out properly? And just be aware that there are alternatives to campfires. We don't always have to have a campfire. The sixth principle is to respect wildlife. We are in their home every time we step outside our front door, and we want to be respectful. We want to make sure that they can continue to, live their lives, that they can get the things that they need to survive, and that we aren't disrupting that ecosystem. And the main things there are keeping a safe distance and making sure we never feed wildlife, either intentionally or unintentionally. And then the seventh principle is to be considerate of others. These spaces are for everyone, and we want all people to have access to them, to feel safe and welcome and included. And our actions can have an effect on other people's experience, other people's enjoyment, other people's ability to connect with nature. And we just want to be mindful of that. You know, are we making too much noise? Are we being disruptive in any kind of way? Are we creating a welcoming outdoors? All of those things help us to be respectful of others. So again, we teach a 5-day course on the 7 principles. That was a really brief overview, but these are really the kind of core piece of our education. And these are the things that you all can implement into your trips, into the work that you're doing, so that your guides, your staff, your clients, all of the folks that you're interacting with understand these 7 principles and are able to apply them on the trips that they go on. We know that like whenever someone is working with an outfitter and guide is a prime time for them to learn Leave No Trace, because they're probably interacting with you because they don't have the experience. You know, maybe this is a new area for them, maybe it's a new activity, and they're not only looking for, you know, the gear and the guidance, they're also looking for how they can have a Leave No Trace trip. So incorporating this is a really added value for your clients and helps to make sure that you all are minimizing your impacts in the work that you do. So trying to do that can be pretty overwhelming. It's hard to know where to start in implementing this. And we have designed a framework to help you know what areas to implement Leave No Trace, how to do so, and to kind of measure how well you're doing. And that is our gold standard designation program. So we have a few different types of designation, and gold standard is really our highest form of recognition. It is awarded to sites and organizations that are implementing Leave No Trace at a really high level and that are really making it, you know, just central to everything that they're doing. So working towards the designation is a really great aspiration. It's a really great goal to set for yourself and for your organization. But even aside from that, just kind of engaging with the process provides you with a really great framework for figuring out how to implement Leave No Trace, for getting started, and for giving yourself, you know, kind of a roadmap for what this looks like. So we have a few different types of designations. Gold standard sites, those are parks and protected areas. Gold standard youth programs, those are groups that work with kids. And then gold standard outfitter and guide, that's where we're going to focus today because that's where most of you would fit in. But you can, if you're interested, look at any of these other types of designations as well. So all of the designations are based on a Leave No Trace assessment that is specific to that type of organization. So this is the Leave No Trace assessment for outfitters and guides. And it has 7 different criteria that we measure, and we measure them from anywhere from a 0 to a 4. And the kind of big thing to note here is that for staff, that's the first criteria, the points are weighted double. And that's because staff is one of the most important pieces. So if you score a 3 for staff, you're actually scoring a 6. And when we're thinking about gold standard, sites that achieve the designation need to score a minimum of 20 points on this assessment. And then there are a couple of areas where you need to score at least a 3 because we know that those are kind of the most critical areas. So those are the 2 requirements for designation, is scoring overall at least 20 points, and then in a couple different areas, at least a 3. And I'm going to walk through this assessment a little bit to give you some idea of what each of these criteria look like, how you could start to improve your score in those areas. But I would suggest that you all, if you're interested in this, you can head to our website and we have a tool where you can score your organization. It'll record the score so you can always check back on it. And it's just a great way to kind of see where your starting point is and decide maybe what areas you want to work on improvement. So the first section is criteria 1 through 2, and that's staff and training. And this is an area where we do require a minimum of 1 score of a 3. So you could score a 3 in staff or in training, and that would meet that requirement. And this measures what type of training your staff has and what type of training is continuously offered. And the reason why this one is first and why staff is weighted ×2 and why you have to have at least one score of a 3 is because having Leave No Trace training is so important. It builds that strong foundation so that everybody knows what is Leave No Trace, how do you practice it. Everyone has those skills and that expertise. So then it can be incorporated into all of these other areas. So you can score anywhere from a 1 to a 4. A 1 would be at least one staff member is trained in Leave No Trace at any level, and training is encouraged. Or all the way up to a 4, you have at least 2 staff that are certified at either a level 1 or level 2, and training is facilitated both annually and during onboarding. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about what our training structure looks like so that you know what a certification is and how to get those things. But the really important part here is just how many staff are trained and at what level. So we have kind of 2 main tracks of training. We have our certification courses and then just our kind of recreational training. So in order to score a 3 or a 4, you need to have some staff that have received a certification. And we offer a level 1 certification. That's a 2-day course that is either virtual or in person. And then we also offer a level 2 certification. That's a 5-day course, and that is always in person. The cool thing about the 5-day course is once you have some staff that have received that certification, they're eligible and have all the requirements done to teach their own level 1 courses. So you can kind of bring that training in-house and you can provide that training for the rest of your staff. So that's a great option, especially if you have a really large staff that you want to get trained. So those are our certification courses. And then we also have just our recreational training. That's our training at any level. We have a 2-day skills course that you can take. And then we also have all kinds of workshops that we offer that last from anywhere from 30 minutes to a whole day. And that includes our free online courses. If you're really looking to get started, I would say this is the best place to start because you can very easily have all of your staff take our free online courses and build that strong foundation, score some points on that assessment, and make these kind of part of your annual training or your onboarding. And we have a Leave No Trace 101 course. That one takes around 45 minutes. We have a Leave No Trace backcountry course. If you lead courses or trips in the backcountry, that one's a great option. And these are constantly updated and added to, and they're completely free. You can access them at any time. So a really great place to start with training. The next section of the assessment looks at criteria 3, which is practices. So this is how do you actually practice Leave No Trace in your organization, on your trips? How is it practiced by both your clients and your staff? We know that in order to really have strong Leave No Trace practices, it's important to have them kind of institutionalized, have real guidance, real kind of policies around how you're going to practice Leave No Trace, rather than just have it be kind of, just an encouragement or just something that you say you're going to do, really having clear policies on how you'll practice Leave No Trace. So this is another area where you are required to score at least a 3 for the designation. And we have anywhere from a 1, which would be staff and clients are encouraged to be minimally impactful, but there's no specific guidance, there's no best practices provided, all the way up to a 4, which would be guidance is consistently in place, it's followed by staff and clients, and it's aligned with local best practices. So thinking about where you lead trips, what types of trips you lead, and having that guidance really specific to that. Because if you lead, climbing trips in Moab, you're going to need to know about cryptobiotic soil and wag bags and, avoiding climbing sandstone when it's wet. Whereas if you lead surfing trips in San Diego, you're going to have some very different practices to incorporate. So having those things that are really specific to the types of trips you lead. And I want to show you some examples from some of our designated outfitters and guides. So the American Alpine Institute, they're one of our gold standard outfitters and guides. In their guide manual, they have really specific policies for each of their trips and how Leave No Trace is practiced. This is used for all of the guides' trainings, and then it's referenced throughout. So everyone has a really clear understanding of what's expected. And then this other example here, this Denali cultural landscape. This is from RMI Expeditions, another gold standard outfitter and guide. And they have, for all of the areas that they lead trips, they have these cultural landscape guides that walk through what Leave No Trace looks like in each of those areas. And these are available both to the guides as well as to all of their clients. So they have really clear policies around how to practice Leave No Trace in their specific areas. All right, our next section is criteria 4 through 5, and this is looking at pre and during trip education. Like I mentioned, we know that guides and folks who are, renting gear offer a really critical educational touch point for people. So this is how we can harness that. It's looking at how we teach Leave No Trace before a trip and during a trip. And this is another area where we have at least one has to be a 3 for the designation. So from a 1, we have minimum impact information included. This would mean that you're not really referencing Leave No Trace. You're maybe just saying, pack it in, pack it out. It's not specific. It's not tapping into the 7 principles and the kind of national campaign that Leave No Trace is. It's just, again, kind of encouraged, a little bit looser. Whereas if we're looking at a 4, we have information consistently includes Leave No Trace and is locally tailored. Again, with that locally tailored, because we want it to be specific to the types of trips you're leading. So some examples again of what this looks like. For RMI Expeditions, this is pre-trip information. They have videos for each of the 7 principles that walk through how you would practice that on your trip. They are mountaineering guiding service. They lead people up different types of mountains. So there's some really specific practices they have to incorporate. And these are available for all of their clients before the trip so that they really understand what the expectations are going to be. For American Alpine Institute, they provide a program packet as part of the pre-trip information. So this is emailed to all participants, and it includes things like a packing list. It includes things like, where to meet, all of that kind of really critical information. It also includes Leave No Trace so that people know how they're going to practice Leave No Trace before they even arrive, and they can really familiarize themselves with it. When we look at during trip information, here's some more examples. This one comes from Signal Mountain Lodge in the Tetons, and they have orientation forums that they go through every time they rent a kayak or any other kind of equipment. And their orientation form includes environmental education and Leave No Trace. So their staff, whenever they're renting a kayak, they make sure they talk about all of these really key critical pieces. Things like your trash, where you're going to put your trash afterwards, how you make sure you have a trash bag, your human waste, anything related to fishing and wildlife that folks need to be aware of. They make sure they talk about it when they are renting the kayak. And then these other examples come again from American Alpine Institute and RMI. They have their pre-trip orientation where they make sure they go through Leave No Trace. And then while they're out on their trips, they have kind of teachable moments, opportunities to teach and talk about Leave No Trace throughout the trip so that it is constantly reinforced and it is really site specific to the trips that they're leading. We also have a lot of materials that you can use that already exist, so you don't have to come up with this by yourself. We have posters, we have stickers, we have these really cool ethics cards that are for all different types of activities like climbing, paddling, mountain biking, that you can hand out to clients or to folks who are maybe renting something from you so that everyone has that information and they can really easily look through it. We also have a free video library that can be utilized that includes things like how to go to the bathroom outdoors, how to wash your dishes when you're camping, how to do all kinds of Leave No Trace skills. And those are, again, free to use, so you can incorporate them into the information you're providing clients. And you don't have to reinvent the wheel by creating these things from scratch. Our next section is criteria 6, and this is looking at partnerships. So this is really thinking about how you interact with the land and water managers for the areas where trips that you guide are being held, or for maybe where your clients are taking the items they rent out on trips. We want to make sure that there's a really strong relationship between outfitters and guides and land and water managers, because there's a lot that you all can learn from each other. There's a lot of support in that relationship that can help benefit our outdoor areas. So a score of a 1 would be that you kind of rarely interface with land and water managers. Maybe it's only when you're required to for your special use permit. Maybe it's only when they reach out to you first. It's not a very strong relationship. All the way up to a 4, where you consistently are interfacing with them and you even provide some level of support. And this could be in the form of financial support, just volunteer hours. That's really critical. It could be in data collection. Maybe you report back to them about trail conditions or impacts that you see while you're out on trips in areas they might not be able to get to as often. Some of that communication can be really critical for helping them to manage these outdoor areas, because they have a huge task of managing our public lands. Again, some examples: we have RMI that does annual cleanups at one of the campgrounds that they regularly utilize on their mountaineering trips. So they are showing up annually, they're doing a big cleanup, they're getting involved and giving back to that site. This photo in the middle here, this is from American Alpine Institute. They worked with their land and water managers to install these wag bag kind of distribution boxes. So climbers in the area can get wag bags. They help to provide financial support for providing the wag bags, and it has drastically reduced the human waste impacts in that area. And then this photo on the side, this is Signal Mountain Lodge. They regularly work with Leave No Trace to bring out one of our traveling teams when they have really high visitation times. So as an example, over 4th of July, we're going to have a team in the Tetons at Signal Mountain Lodge so that we can provide some kind of pop-up education to their visitors. And again, it just helps the Park Service to manage these areas in these really high visitation times, and just helps improve that partnership. And then the final piece of our assessment is sustainability. And this one is an area where we often see lower scores. And so if you are scoring lower, don't be stressed out about that. This is kind of an aspirational piece, because a lot of sustainability practices are more dependent on local infrastructure, on funding, on things that are sometimes outside of our control. But we really want to strive to incorporate other types of sustainability into our organization, because the things we do, even in our office, still have an effect on our outdoor areas and on our planet. So a score of 1 would be incorporating 1 sustainability measure, all the way up to a score of 4, which would be incorporating 4 sustainability measures. And sustainability measures is kind of a loose term. We keep it loose on purpose so that whatever you're doing, we want to hear about it. Some examples are from Signal Mountain Lodge. They work with local farmers to compost all of the food waste from their lodge, and then it's provided to the farms so that it's staying out of landfills. They have a recycling program to recycle those propane canisters, which are notoriously difficult to recycle and add up to a lot of waste. And then they also work with their local waste management to have on-site recycling. So that's kind of one example of a sustainability measure, is minimizing those single-use items, thinking about recycling and composting. Some other examples could be maybe you have solar on your building, maybe you have electric vehicles, or maybe you really work to carpool when you're going on trips so that you are, being mindful of the carbon emissions. Things like that are all going to be sustainability practices that we would be interested in hearing about. And all of those things add up to, healthier public lands, a healthier planet. Now, when we're thinking about the gold standard designation process, the first step in that is going through the assessment like we just did. You can go through and score your organization, see where your starting point is, and figure out what pieces you want to work on, what pieces you maybe want to improve the score on. The next step would be training. Training is really important to make sure you have that foundational knowledge. So figuring out which staff would be good to get certified in Leave No Trace, sending out those free online courses so that staff can get trained at least at that level. That would be kind of the next phase. The third phase would be implementing anything that came out of the assessment. Maybe you identified that incorporating more information into the pre-trip emails that clients get is something you want to strive to do, so you work on that. Maybe it is incorporating it more into your practices and the policies you have, so you work on that. That would be that implementation phase. After you've done those things and your score is to that minimum, you can apply for the designation. We have an application template that you fill out that helps you compile all the information and let us know what you're doing. Our team then reviews that application. We send you any feedback we have, any questions, and then hopefully you move towards being a designated gold standard outfitter and guide. And with the designation, you're listed on our website as a gold standard outfitter and guide. You receive the gold standard logo so that you can use it on your website, your social media, any of your marketing materials. We also do a press release and kind of try to get some attention for you receiving this award. And the designation lasts for 5 years, after which, if you want to maintain it, you just resubmit the materials so we know you're still doing all of those things. And we do have you fill out an annual report, which is just like a 15-minute survey to let us know each year how things are going. But that designation is, it's really great to just be awarded for the work that you're doing, but it also is a great marketing tool for reaching clients, for getting people interested in working with you. We know from a lot of our research that people really want to know that the folks they're traveling with, the places they're traveling to, have sustainability and have these things in mind. So it can be a really great tool for, drawing some more clients to your business, because this is something people really value, and it's, an added benefit for folks to learn about Leave No Trace when they're working with your organization. So that's a little bit about the Leave No Trace Gold Standard Outfitter and Guide program. I also wanted to share my email, so you can reach out to me if you have any questions, if you are wanting to meet and talk about the designation and how it applies to your organization. That's something we can do. And I can make sure you get all that information, you know where to find things. We really are hoping that you all want to get involved, teach Leave No Trace, incorporate it, whether you work all the way towards the designation or you just work towards incorporating it at any level. All of those things really make a difference in improving the health of our public lands and in empowering everyone to become stewards. So would really love to hear from you. And I'm not sure if you've got any other questions or things you want to chat about, but that is all the slides that I have.
Thank you, Erin. This is super helpful. I absolutely love what you guys are doing in helping businesses get featured on the site and provide an actual process that when outfitters want to follow or they care about becoming more educated and educating their staff, they actually get a great framework on how to actually implement these solutions. I think that's a huge piece of it, because I think a lot of our outfitters, a lot of their guides are Leave No Trace certified when we talk to them, when we go out on trips with them, but having a framework and having a structure which rewards them in the end is actually really amazing. And we truly believe at TripOutside that having that touch point with the guide and that the local shop, whether they see information in the shop while they're renting gear or in their pre-trip email, is all of it is worthwhile to make sure that we protect the places that we love. And I really believe that in the market that we have now, where there's so many options sometimes, depending on the place you're at, uh, to decide which outfitter you're going to choose, which guide service you're going to go with, having a company that goes above and beyond and cares about the environment on top of their amazing Google reviews and TripAdvisor reviews and TripOutside features. These things really do matter in helping you set yourself apart from the competition as well. So even on the business side, I think it's very beneficial for all. I think some of the questions that I had are there any potential collaborations between cities and counties and parks and recs and gold standard outfitters? Like I know there's the whole, I've seen a lot of work being done with counties or cities becoming gold standard certified and protecting their sites. There are things that outfitters could collaborate on with
Yeah,
those
absolutely.
sites and
Yeah,
create better
that's a
partnerships.
great question. Yeah, so similar to how I just went through the outfitter and guide assessment, for parks and protected areas, for other types of programs, they each have their own assessment. And for them, uh, having outfitters and guides who go above and beyond and are practicing and teaching Leave No Trace helps improve their scores. So similar to how one of the scores for outfitters and guides is thinking about partnerships and how you're working with land and water managers. For those land and water managers, part of their score is how are you working with outfitters and guides? How are you working with your partners? And how are you helping them to teach and practice Leave No Trace? So there is a lot of crossover in helping those areas where you work to also achieve the designation. A great example of this is Grand County in Moab. I have yet to have any gold standard outfitters and guides in Grand County, but Arches National Park has achieved the designation, and the Grand County Trail Ambassadors program has also achieved the designation. And a lot of that is collaborative work that they did together with having the Grand County program really support the park really supporting them. And we also have a couple other organizations within that community really working towards achieving the designation. And what's happening is it's just creating this culture of Leave No Trace in Moab so that pretty much any visitor, whether you're staying at a hotel, a campground, whether you're going to the park or you're going to BLM land, you're encountering Leave No Trace education. And it's really creating just a big culture of Leave No Trace in that whole destination. And then Leave No Trace also, we have a tourism program that works with destination marketing organizations. And that is a huge part of what we do. We don't necessarily have gold standard designations for them, but we do work a lot with destination marketing organizations, and they are always really interested when we have gold standard outfitters and guides and gold standard designations because they like to talk about those types of organizations and help to promote them as well.
Awesome. What are there any costs associated with the training, with the level 1, level 2, level 3? As outfitters think about going through that, how can they, plan for it and budget for it?
Yeah. So I would say the main costs for gold standard designation are those trainings. The certifications can cost anywhere from around $100 to around $900 if you do the 5-day course. Especially there are some providers that we work with that do those courses where you go to Yellowstone or you go sea kayaking, and it's like half guided trip, half Leave No Trace course. So those ones can get a little bit more expensive. The most cost-effective option is to do the level 1 course and to do the virtual option. Those ones are typically the cheapest because you don't have to pay for travel to go to any of the locations where courses are held. They're a lot easier to do within a work week, and they happen a lot more frequently. Those ones are typically around $100. And outside of that, for the non-certification courses, those are typically free. So you can at least get that level of training without any kind of cost associated. And then we do annually offer scholarships for our level 2 courses. So those are usually around the springtime when we have that open, and we provide scholarships for different folks who are really interested in getting that certification, but maybe cost is a barrier for them.
Awesome. And then for the content that outfitters might want to use for pre and during pre-trip and during trip or even post-trip education, is that something they need to create from scratch themselves for their specific local areas, or can they use existing videos? You mentioned that you guys have some libraries of content. Is that something that could be applied? I imagine that's a big sort of hurdle, is, stopping and creating all the necessary information that's going to apply to that outfitter, to that area. How can they partner with Lead?
Yeah, so I would say the difference between a 3 and a 4 is on the assessment is usually where that kind of extra piece of having an outfitter and guide organization fine tune those materials to be really hyper specific to their organization. But if you're looking at a score of a 3, then utilizing the existing information that we have will typically get you there. We have, like I mentioned, the video library. We have an online store where you can purchase a lot of materials if you want actual hard copies of things to hand out. And then we also have a free resource library where you can download things, print things, incorporate them into your pre-trip emails and things of that nature. We also have a community partnership program where organizations can join as community partners. It is $100 a year for the community partnership, or I believe it's $150 a year. Sorry, I misspoke there. $150 a year, and you get access to the community partnership library, which has a ton more resources. And we also work with our community partners to help them in fine-tuning the language to be more specific to their trip, their location, the types of activities they're doing. So if you're looking for Leave No Trace to kind of have some guidance and help you develop that language, joining as a community partner is the best way to have us kind of work with you more closely on that.
Finally, the badge that the outfitter gains in the end that they can add on their website, are they able to use that on other websites? Because we would love to actually feature their gold standard status on their listings and their blog posts and different things on our website. Is that something they can share with other places, other
Yeah,
sites?
yeah, absolutely. It can be used for really any ways that you are marketing your organization. It is this logo here, our Leave No Trace Gold Standard Outfitter and Guide. You can't really like change the colors of it and things like that, but as long as you're keeping it as is, you're able to utilize it in any of the places that you're marketing your organization. So websites like yours, if there are other areas where you are listing your organization as a potential outfitter and guide to use, this can be a great way to, like you said, make yourself stand out from the hundreds of other outfitters and guides that people are choosing from.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it'd be a great practice if they update their Google My Business listings, their own
Mhm.
websites, obviously, and just anywhere they're featuring their business, to make sure they include this as a way to, if not, separate themselves, to even educate the customer on what Leave No Trace is. And I think we all care about these places that we recreate in and benefit from financially by running businesses that get people outside. And we as a company always think about that. So these are, really great opportunities uh, for anyone to join. Is there, the last question is, are there, or gold standards for companies that maybe help facilitate the outdoor, getting people into the outdoors, like TripOutside, where we're not necessarily leading the trips?
Mhm.
Are there gold standard certifications for, that for maybe not as local park or a county or
Mhm.
DMO? How can we do a better job of becoming more
Yeah.
educated in this?
Yeah. So our gold standard program designation is kind of the catch-all bucket that we have for other types of organizations that are still working, in public lands, in outdoor recreation, but don't necessarily fit these other designations. So I would say that is usually the area that I point folks towards. It is a little more broad. It has a little more opportunities to fit different types of organizations, because we want everyone to have this kind of framework to know how to incorporate Leave No Trace and to be able to work towards a designation. So Gold Standard program is the kind of best option that we have right now for fitting in those other types of organizations.
Awesome. This is so incredibly helpful and useful. I'm sure this is going to continue to evolve. And if we get questions, we'll send them your way. Thanks for sharing your email address. I'll share all the links and all the information in a blog post on our site and on the YouTube video that we create. So if you have any questions, please reach out to Erin, or please reach out to me at read@tripoutside.com. Thank you so much for your time today, Erin, and I absolutely love what you guys are doing. And thank you for doing what you do to help us protect the places we love.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.